And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Nothing much, man. What's going on with you?
Doing well. Out of quarantine. Been 4 days out. I think that's the biggest offseason storyline of the year
I
thus
think at
far.
this point, considering I don't think we've had anything else really going on, I think you getting your freedom back is far and away the most important thing that I think your listeners are paying attention to now. So
I think no, it's funny. I actually got a Facebook message from someone saying, "I hope you're doing well. Hope you're hanging in there." I'm like, "Thanks, man. I got out today, but really appreciate it." So everyone was following it. It was all over the news. But I'm out. I'm out. Thank God. Back home. So lucky me and lucky world because you guys get to see more of me. Congratulations. Uh,
exactly.
um, at any rate, this is Bruins Beat. And if you guys haven't noticed, there's not much going on in the Bruins world of late. And by much, I mean like nothing going on at all.
After we got past the reverse retro jerseys, it's just been a barren wasteland. We should have known that was going to be the last little nugget of info we were going to get for probably like a month now.
The Bruins have been tweeting out pictures of old players and mustaches for like what feels like weeks now because there's not much going on. It's funny. I always text you, and I'm always like, if the NHL could have a fourth of the excitement of the NBA offseason or a fifth, I would take anything close to that. I mean, imagine if we were Celtics writers or podcasters or like there's so much.
Oh yeah.
There's so much. And with Bruins with the NHL, there's none of that. None of that. There's no super teams. There's no big, the free agent stuff goes away in like a week. Uh,
No
you know,
drama.
there's no real drama with it. Torrey Krug signs with the Blues at like 9 o'clock on a Friday night. Like it's how it goes. But it's annoying because I would love for it to be there'd be some more fireworks. But I'll segue it with this. There could be some fireworks with the Bruins upcoming. There's still some unfinished business. And I'm not even kidding. That's not a joke.
Oh
Jake,
yeah.
you guys remember that Jake DeBrusk still needs to be re-signed as an RFA? Did you guys forget that? So there hasn't been any news on this front for a while. He's just kind of sitting there as an RFA. But when does this get done?
Well, I think you're in a point now where maybe not exactly with DeBrus, but especially with another kind of loose end was Dano Chara, where I don't think you're going to get a lot of clarity until probably you have more concrete details about this upcoming season. That's definitely more relevant for Chara, who I think it's one of those cases where he wants to see what this new season is going to look like before, the guy's 43 years old. He wants to go through another whole season if it's going to be in a bubble or he's deferring all of his money or something like that. Like, I think that matters a lot to him. For DeBrus won't matter quite as much because, I mean, he's still a young player. He's still got a lot of years ahead of him. But I think it very well could be a situation where the gears don't start turning on those contract talks until they have an actual set date for training camp. Because I think that's where you can kind of set the parameters, right, of a contract negotiation for an RFA, because the chance those guys could hold out. There's a chance, they're trying to see how long they can kind of be in a game of chicken with their team in terms of getting the most money out of these RFA negotiations. So it wouldn't surprise me if it drags into, the kind of lead up to training camp with DeBrus, because again, it's a tough break for any free agent RFA during this time, right? You're going to be taking a lot less than you expected you were going to take. But, I'm sure DeBrusque and his agent are still hoping to at least get, a solid, raise in pay. I don't think they're going to get the bump that you saw, Besser or Travis Konechny or any of those guys where it gets into like, 5 million or something like that. But I mean, my hunch would be, 3.5, 3.75, maybe 4 over like a 2-year deal. I think it's going to be another bridge deal, which at this point, you know, I think that's probably the best for all parties involved, because DeBrusque at this point is probably like, all right, well, this year and probably next year are a shot, right? It sucks, but if I, keep with, what I'm doing, and I think I can be a 30-goal scorer, and in 2 years, I've kept at that level of production and the market kind of rebounds, then I'm in line for 5+ million per year. So I think that's probably the easiest kind of path for all parties to kind of get this resolved, but I don't expect it to be a situation where it's going to be like, all right, you ready to sign this deal? All right, yeah, let's sign and move on. Like, I think it's definitely going to be a lot of kind of going back and forth because, again, the market's not great, but I'm sure DeBrusk and his agent are still hoping to at least get, a solid return on kind of what he's put forward so far with the Bruins.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 2-year deal is the right move for, as you said, both sides, because it's like, you're not getting a big long-term deal in the next couple of years. You're not, with the state of the league, with the state of your play. You absolutely need to just take the bridge deal, and the 3.5 to 4, I think, is the perfect range. I think we're kind of out of that window where he'd be traded. I don't see that taking shape. I know, at the beginning of the offseason, we kind of thought that could happen. I don't really see that happening now. I feel like we would have heard, some stuff would have leaked. We would have heard a few rumblings about him potentially being shopped, and there really hasn't been any of that. There has not been a lot on the Jake DeBrusk trade front. I know at the beginning of the offseason, we were like, oh, they're definitely going to trade him to Carolina for like Jake Gardner or some bullshit like that. But there hasn't been any rumblings of that. My guess is it's sort of like the McAvoy-Carlo situation last year where it's into training camp. They come back midway through, and it's like, whatever. I remember going into last year, we kind of thought like, oh, my God, McAvoy could be holding out till like November, and he was signed in the middle of training camp. So these things end up finding a way to get done. I don't think the Bruins want to move on from DeBrusk, and I don't think DeBrusk wants to move on from the Bruins. So I would not be surprised to see that break way later on whenever training camp decides to start, which, I mean, we're recording this November 23rd. You're listening November 24th or a few days after. And there's no real like traction on anything with them starting.
No.
There's a return to play committee of like 15 or 16 players, but they haven't, there's a lot of issues coming up with the NHLPA. This doesn't look like it's going to get started for a while.
No, I mean, they still have that targeted date of January 1st, which, I mean, again, they've had that run. They announced that, I think, like October 6th, I think is when they set that date down, and you really haven't seen much happen since then. So, I mean, let's say they start January 1st. That means training camp starts what? December 14th, 15th, around then, 2 weeks. You think probably even more. I mean, you also have to get these guys over to the States. There's a lot of people in Europe or up in Canada. Like, easier so that you can't just be like, all right, we're ready to go, and you guys are showing up.
We're starting tomorrow.
Yeah, there's still a pandemic going on, so there still is a few roadblocks to deal with. But, I mean, you'd be more convinced about starting on the start of January if they were making inroads with some of the protocols. And it doesn't even seem like it's like the safety protocols or stuff like that is a sticking point. It's not like they're doing another bubble or something like that where these players, the NHLPA has to be like, fuck no, we're not doing that again, right? There's nothing like that. But now you're seeing the fight over salary deferment is the thing that, the NHL wants another 13% for the players to defer their salary on top of, I think, the 10% they already agreed to in the CBA. So, we look back in the summer and they sign off on that CBA for, I think, an extra 4 years. And we're like, oh, this is great. Like, this is the one positive of this shitty years. These two sides actually got along and, for the greater good, we're like, oh, wow, this, we're at least going to avoid, a lockout or something like that. We, the players take that deferment and like the 20% escrow. And it's like, yeah, we know we have to sacrifice some money along the way, but it's kind of part of what, the climate we're in right now. Now you have the owners like, by the way, we need another 13%. It's like, how do you think the players are going to react to something like that? Like, I know the times are tough, but after you put in all that work to sign the CBA to then just drop another, like, oh, by the way, another 13% a year, we're gonna take that.
It's like taxes. They come at you. Here's one tax. Here's another tax.
So, it seems like all the reports you're hearing is that the NHLPA is not enthused about it, which is shocking. So even if this is something that gets resolved, maybe they negotiate it to like a 6% additional deferment or something like that. It still doesn't give hope to the fact that we're going to be starting in early January, because if you're putting, that deadline down and you really are kind of sticking to it, you need to be kind of have, signed off on all the paperwork, cross the T's, dot the I's by this week, I think. I don't think you can go into the end of November, start of December and just be like, yeah, training camp's in 2 weeks.
This is like another lockout because it's not the safety protocols. That's not what's being held up here. Like, I think they have that kind of a little bit under control. At least they know what they're going to do for that. But it's the money aspect of it. It's legitimately just another lockout because the NBA has a plan. Again, maybe we should transition to covering basketball, but the NBA has a plan. They're going to come back at a certain date, right before Christmas. Talk about a Christmas gift with them coming back. All these things are happening. Tatum signs an extent. There's some lightning right there, by the way. I don't know if you watch this on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, big flash of lightning. It's November. What the hell? But yeah, they got to figure something out to come back, and that's a loud clap of thunder. By the way, I'm getting distracted, but Monday morning, I had to go to a doctor's appointment at like 7:30 in the morning in Wellesley, and it was pouring rain. Talk about a horrible start to a Monday. Pouring rain, shitty out, just like ass.
You should be a meteorologist. That should be like your forecast.
Ass. Today is going to be ass. That's what my meteorologist, my report should be. By the way, it's funny. There was during a Patriots game recently. I forget what channel it was, but I was watching it. It was the Ravens game.
Mm-hmm.
It was the night of the Ravens Sunday Night Football game where it was pouring like badly, and they cut out at the very end of the first quarter. So like it was coming I think Lamar Jackson was taking the Ravens down the field, ended up throwing a pick. I missed it because the local news took over to basically just say it was raining outside. I mean, like, why? Like, I can tell.
Information you need, Evan. So,
it's annoying. But anyways, I digress. So yeah, hopefully the NHL returns soon. You also mentioned Chara. I don't see Chara going anywhere. Solely because I think you're in the midst of a pandemic, you're 43 years old, you have a family, you're deeply rooted in Boston. People are like, oh, he's going to Toronto. Oh, he's going to go, to Team X or Team Y. I don't see that happening. I really don't. And I don't think it makes sense for him. And he says he wants to stay here. I think the only option is Bruins or retirement.
Yeah. I also want to add on top of, I think now, especially where you're seeing as tough as kind of the COVID climate is right now, that they're hoping, fingers crossed that, vaccinations could start by December. And, I expect that is going to gradually ramp up through January and February all the way. I think there's a few experts who said hopefully things can be somewhat normal by like early May. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the NHL is also like, we're still in this kind of labor dispute. Like, fuck it. We're going to aim to go for February. And if it's 2 months of kind of a rough kind of go of it in terms of attendance, but we can gradually start easing things up as we get more people vaccinated. I mean, for a league that's so dependent on gate revenue, I think that kind of makes a lot of sense rather than try to rush through this negotiation and then start in January when none of us is even going to be there to start. So I could see that definitely being kind of the route they take, because I think the fact that they're going to have a lot of empty barns isn't really going to help them out that much.
Maybe at the gates, at the front of the garden, in front of these rinks and arenas, you can just vaccinate the people as they walk in. So they come in, boom, shoot them up. They're good to go. We just figured it out.
That we do that for anti-vaxxers. It's like, all right, well, you can't go into the Bruins camp to get a shot, you dummies. So
you have to get vaccinated to go in this place. Sorry, I'm gonna take a stand against vaccinations.
Yeah.
One of my least favorite arguments is the anti-vaxxer route. But anyways, there's another interesting Bruins tidbit out there, and this is sort of a theory I have, or what I think they should do. So Joe Haggerty reported about 5 days ago that a source told him that they're shopping Urho Vakanainen. Whether or not that gets done is another thing. But I think it's an interesting thing to think about, because we've talked about this at length. Going into this season, it feels like on the left side, you have two younger left shot defensemen from Providence and Jacob Zboril and Urho Vakanainen vying for a spot in the top six, or at least up in Boston. And to me, I think if you have both of them there with Matt Grzelcyk, I think you're not even close to deep enough. That is two chances you're taking on the back end that could go wrong. It's not likely to be that going into a season where you're competing with the division that the Bruins could be competing in, as we've talked about and Greg Wyshynski tweeted, I think it was the same one that we said it was probably going to be, Rangers, Penguins, you have all these teams. Actually, I don't know if the Penguins are in it.
Penguins are actually not. They're in the Central, which is kind of funny. But I think Carolina is the team that kind of swaps out what we thought it was going to be. So
yeah, so it's a stacked division. Rest in peace to the Devils and the Sabres, because those two teams are going to be toast. But at any rate, you put that left side up against those teams, you're not feeling great. So to me, I think it would make sense to trade either one of Zaboral or Vakanainen, and the one to trade, because he has way more value, is Vakanainen. I feel like Vakanainen probably has a lot more trade value right now than a guy like Zaboral, because Vakanainen was, I believe he's younger. He was drafted 2 years later.
mm-hmm.
I feel like trading Vakanainen, I don't know what you get for him.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can find a serviceable left shot defenseman, but that's kind of, I don't know what team would be giving up an experienced left shot defenseman for someone who's not experienced. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. But maybe you get a forward out of it. I don't know. Maybe you can get something for him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think at this point where, I'd be surprised if a trade happened. One, because I think every team is right now scared shitless of trading anyone or moving money or, just giving away assets or something like that. So I think that's obviously the biggest roadblock. But I also don't know what exactly his trade value is. Like, I think, people are excited to see maybe what Vakanainen can bring, but it's not like he's, tore up the AHL last year or his value's at an all-time high where it's like, we'll give you a guy who's 29, 30 just for a chance to get Vakanainen. I think he's still a talented player, but it's not like he's kind of had like a steady uphill climb in terms of his development. He comes over from Europe and he comes over from Europe, impresses out of the gate with Providence, has a really, really good World Juniors, and then gets injured. Last year is a bit more of a struggle. Like Bruce Cassidy literally calls him out for he's a shitty practice player. Doesn't you would expect he'd be the kind of the last defenseman, like Providence defenseman out of training camp last year. Jacob Zboril kind of leapfrogs him there and is the last defenseman left in camp. At this point too, I think if you're the Bruins and you're worried about, making sure you have cap flexibility, I don't know how it really helps you to trade a guy like that kind of who you don't really know what you have, but you could have something good. He's cheap, and I don't know what exactly that you're going to get in return for him. I don't think it's not like he's a guy that if you traded Studnicka, which they wouldn't do, right? You would get something good in return. If you traded probably Frederick, maybe another piece, like you probably get something promising in return. But like
Beecher.
Beecher, but Vakanainen, I don't know if you're getting it wouldn't be like a 1-for-1 swap or something like that, right? It's not getting a Bob McKenzie.
You're telling me that Vakanainen is not going to the Lightning for Victor Hedman?
Yeah. So if he's part of a large deal, then it makes sense. But I don't know what you're going to get if he's just kind of the one player you want to move. And if you just look at the roster and, how he's at least a valuable, it's kind of like Anders Bjork, right? Like you don't really know where exactly Anders Bjork's going to fit into the lineup. You expect, hopefully he's a third liner, but you also don't want to move him because he's making like 1.6 million for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Considering the market right now, that's a piece you don't move, especially when you don't really know what you have, but you're at least intrigued by what he can bring you. So that's kind of how I view it. Like I'd be surprised. I don't know why they'd be actively shopping him unless he's just been horrible overseas in terms of what they've seen from him during training, during this kind of lull in play. But it seems odd to kind of punt on a player like that right now, considering you have so many holes on that left side.
Yeah, I agree. Because I don't know if you're not going to get like a veteran left shot defenseman or an experienced one at least in return. It wouldn't, I don't know how you would do that deal. You'd have to package Vakanainen with like picks or again, he makes good money. So it's also just like, what's the point? The value, I feel like the risk is worth it with these guys, but you look at that left side and you think, I don't know how they are going to really compete to the level that they want to compete with that left side, unless Zaboral and Vakanainen or John Moore, or they switch a righty over there, unless they flourish. Yeah. I don't know how you sort of overcome that. But they seem okay with it thus far. I mean, they don't seem to be actively, you don't hear their name actively looking for defensemen or left shot defensemen. So we'll see how that goes. That's sort of been the storyline of the offseason.
I also think that the Bruins are pretty high on Lozon. I think they're probably going to
Oh,
expect.
Lozon as well. I can't believe I forgot him.
I think
Lozon too.
I think Cassidy was speaking on NHL Network. I think late last week, and they were kind of chatting about. Don't know if Char's coming back and what you do then. And Cassidy talked quite a lot about Lozon, his improvement last year, and stuff like that. So like, I don't know if your second pairing is just like Lozon and Kahlo, and that's like kind of just a shutdown option or something like that. Like, again, you look on paper, it's not the most, intriguing option, but you could see the case where if he takes a good step forward, it's still like a solid kind of shutdown line there, with Kahlo kind of anchoring that pairing. So they have options. Just you're putting a lot of risk for a team that you hope is going all in, that you need 2 or 3 younger players to really kind of break through or take really big steps forward.
It's funny. I don't know why I always forget Lozon, but he will definitely be in the potentially top 4. He's 6'1", and you put him with Carlo. He's a big body. I mean, you've talked about this at length. These teams that win the Stanley Cup and get there have bigger defensemen and are better at, not letting guys to the front of the net. You put Carlo and Lozon together, you basically have McAvoy Grzelcyk on the first pairing. It's an all offensive, not all offensive, but pretty offensive pairing. And then you have those two on the second pairing. That's a shutdown pairing. And then you have, if Chara returns, you could have Chara Clifton. If Chara doesn't return, it could be Zaboral and Clifton. So I think and there's also Kevin Miller, there's John Moore, there's also Steven Kampfer as well. So they have options back there. It's not going to jump off the paper at you like Torrey Krug would.
Yeah.
Or Oliver Ekman-Larsson would. Remember that fun phase back in September when it was like the Oliver Ekman-Larsson watch? The offseason was fun then. It was so fun. That was why I was like, maybe there's a chance it continues. And it didn't. And I'm annoyed by it. But because I remember thinking like, oh, it'll be hot for September and a little October with the draft. And then it'll have a lull. But then it'll be all like, returning to play and training camps. Where is this training camp and returning to play stuff been? I mean, Jesus. But at any rate, today, short episode today. But Connor, before I let you go, is there anything that you are working on?
Yeah, we're gonna have even though it's the week of Thanksgiving, so content will be not as hectic. We're still gonna have a whole bunch of stuff breaking down. I think we're gonna be checking in on all the players overseas to see how they're doing. Johnny Beecher scored his first goal this past weekend with Michigan against Wisconsin. So I think we're going to do kind of a running series where we just, every week, probably keep tabs on all these players that are overseas. I think that Vakanainen and Cooper Zek, I think both got loaned to teams today on Monday. So, and I think probably as we wait more and more, and we know the AHL is not going to start until at least February, I think. So I think you're going to see a lot more of these players heading either overseas or in some league to kind of stay fresh. So we'll be keeping tabs on that over at BSJ. So subscribe at bostonsportsjournal.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. And for CLNS Media, I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners have a great rest of your week.